Today we're here to talk about the new lens that just dropped, the 100mm Macro GM F2.8.
There we go.
Being the step up to G Master, it had to have all that top.
Yeah, it's got the bells and whistles.
Maybe I'm just excited about it because I've just used it recently, but
Yeah.
I feel like I would use that focus bracketing in so many situations for macro. It's so handy.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Full Frame Podcast presented by Sony. Back in the studio with Sean.
Hey Clyde, how you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. What have you got for us today?
Today we're here to talk about the new lens that just dropped, the 100mm Macro GM F2.8.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And then we're going to unpack a little bit about the challenges of macro and some of the technical stuff that maybe, you need to know before you venture down that path.
Yeah, 100%. I think macro lens, it's cool if you already know about macro lenses, then obviously you'll probably understand a lot of what's cool here. But even for people who are not already big macro shooters, we want to kind of spend some time just talking about how it all works, why it's exciting.
Yeah, and some of even just like the brief conversation we've had already, there's a couple of things in there that are really exciting about the lens.
Oh, I think it's
beyond
be,
just it is a macro.
Yeah. It's I think it's honestly like kind of a dream lens. So for anyone who's into macro.
Yeah.
Should we pull it out?
Let's pull it out.
All right. I'll let you do the honors.
All right. Oh, that sound. Oh. Ooh.
This is the bag that it comes in.
There we go.
Put that away.
Ooh. There we
Mm-hmm.
go. Yeah.
Definitely taking some
100mm
design
macro.
cues from the 90mm macro. So you've got the same. We're going to get that ASMR in there.
We do.
We've got the same similar markings on the for focus on the barrel there. So you can see it's also got the clutch style AF/MF switch, just like the 90mm macro has.
Yeah.
What's your first impressions?
It's a little bit heavier than the original. I like the change to the same polycarbonate body design instead of the metal design from the original 90.
Yep.
I do love the clutch system. I haven't shot a lot of macro, if I'm personally honest, but having something that's like true linear in terms of when we're clicking it to that full MF mode.
Yeah. I think it also helps that it has hard stops at either end in that mode.
Yeah, right at the minimum at 0.26 and then at the maximum obviously at infinity.
Yep.
But also having the magnification ratios printed on the lens as well.
Yep.
So if people keep track of that exactly for what they're shooting, but having that printed as well is quite cool.
So maybe I'll step through some of the kind of headline specs for this one.
Yeah.
I think probably one of the big things to talk about is it's a 1.4 magnification, 1.4x magnification.
And the original 90mm was a 1.1.
1.0.
1.0.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So generally, the standard for a macro lens is 1x magnification.
Yeah.
And maybe for anyone who's not a macro shooter, we'll talk about what magnification ratios mean later. But basically, 1.0 is your standard. So this is 1.4 times, which is a step beyond that, which is cool. But the thing that's really exciting about it is that it's also compatible with our teleconverters.
Oh, both?
Both of them, yeah.
Wow,
So you could use 1.4 or the 2.0, and those will take it to a 2 times magnification or a 2.8 times magnification, respectively.
That's insane.
It is insane. It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so functionally a 3 times magnification lens is a pretty rare thing. We've never had one in the Sony range. Minolta actually made a 3 times magnification one. It was actually you should look it up after this, but it came on a stand. You bought it and it had a stand that you'd put it on so that you could mount your camera above your subject and
shoot top down.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Because 3 times or close to 3 times, you're shooting very small things. You're not just getting close to any random object. It's something really small.
Yeah, yeah. And it really does change the whole way that you approach photography, which again, we'll jump into a little bit later. Yeah. Talking about other stuff that's sort of on the lens. So as you were kind of pointing out there, it does have that same sort of clutch style mechanism for the focus. So when you move it down to the full manual position, hard stops at either end, it's also, as you said, it's a linear response. And then when you go into the autofocus mode, while it's like this, it's got DMF. So that means you let the autofocus get you to, close to your focus target. But then you can finesse it by sort of...
Yeah, you can override it.
That's right.
And finesse.
As soon as you start turning that, it will go into the manual focus mode. And one of the nice things about this is, regardless of whether you're like what body you're using it on, the DMF is built into the lens, so you can do it that way.
Okay. Because if you're using an Alpha 9 or an Alpha 1 Mark II, you would usually have to use that external dial as well.
Mm-hmm. So you can you do need to kind of have them agreeing, but it'll cut in. So that's huge. I think other stuff that's really cool on this one is it is optically stabilized. And it's very powerful stabilization as well. So optimized for macro, it's going to give you really good stabilization even if you're hand holding. I think, for a lot of the really extreme macro stuff, you're still going to want to work from a tripod, maybe even like a macro rail. But, for quicker snapshotty stuff, having that really powerful handheld stabilization is massive.
Especially because we're jumping from 90 to 100. It's not a big difference, but still helpful.
Definitely helps. Yeah, 100%. And if you're using a teleconverter, you could be out at 200 millimeters effectively. So.
Yeah, with a 2.8 magnification, which is...
You're getting in there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. You've also got, of course, the focus range limiter on this, which you'd expect as standard. And you can see there's a full-time DMF switch there that lets you manage it from the body. Declickable aperture, if you're worried about that.
Macro video, it is a thing. I think it's actually making a bit of a comeback.
Yeah.
A lot of people are using, especially for social media, they're doing a lot of like fast whip cuts of smaller like close-ups or like really tight close-ups, not your standard kind of headshot.
Yes.
I see a lot of like close-ups of watch faces and things like that. So I can imagine that would be pretty popular for video.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really unique plants and animals around Australia and New Zealand. So there's heaps to capture. All right.
XD linear motors, I'm guessing?
Dual XD linear. Yep. So two focus groups. It is a floating focus lens. Yep. I mean, you'd expect that for a macro. Generally floating focus, one of the big benefits is it lets you focus closer. So if you ever see a macro lens that doesn't have floating focus, I guess you have to ask how they did it because it's uncommon.
But does that obviously a big autofocus improvement then, I'm guessing?
Yeah, huge.
Because the original 90mm was fantastic. Like it's an optically amazing lens. But if you were using it for anything other than macro, there were obviously some like limitations. Yeah.
I think the number that we quote is it's 1.9 times faster than the 90mm macro.
Yeah.
But I don't even think that really tells the full story.
No.
I think when you start using it, you just feel it's very responsive. And honestly, it just feels much more usable in a practical sense. Obviously 90mm macro, if you were doing portraiture or something like that, there was no issue. But if you're using it for more challenging subjects, it will get harder. And macro photography is the most challenging subjects a lot of the time. It did get challenging. Not that this lens is going to make macro into a walk in the park, but it definitely helps. It makes a big difference.
But also as a dual purpose lens or multi-purpose lens where you could use it outside of just macro potentially.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, this is make a great portrait lens. It's 100mm F2.8.
We talked about a couple of weeks ago, 100mm is a really nice focal length for portraits.
Yeah, just a shade more compression than your classic portrait lens, and that's nice.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we should switch over and start talking a little bit about some of the kind of general challenges with macro, or like what macro does. And then, as we go through that, we'll kind of find our way into some different things to talk about on this specific lens.
Perfect.
I think, when you're shooting macro, there's a few things that just are really, really challenging, right? So I'd say like three of the big things would be like finding focus, actually like focusing on the thing that you want to be sharp. I think movement of the lens and the camera or the subject, either thing.
Or in combination of both.
That's a huge issue. And then another thing that comes up a lot is just getting light onto your subject. Because you're often working really close to your subject. You can either be like shadowing it yourself, or if you're at really high magnification, especially if you're working with either like teleconverters like you would with this, or extension tubes, which are popular for other macro lenses, you're going to be working at like very narrow f numbers, and that's going to have its own set of challenges. So
it's a paradox macro, I feel. It's one of those things where you want as much light as possible.
Yeah.
But then you also need to shoot deeper apertures.
Yeah, it's
so
true.
It's a paradox.
It is tough, and you know, you're always being pushed from different directions with macro. So maybe let's dig down, and I'll just talk quickly about like some of the things that make macro tough. So one of the biggest issues that you run into when you start shooting macro, and everyone encounters this as they start shooting macro, is when we're talking about photography at like our scale, like human scales. Often you're like, I really want to get shallower depth of field. I'd like to blur the background. Yeah. And we're almost never really worried about getting enough depth of field, depth of focus.
Well, usually we're in the process of trying to reduce it.
That's right. If I can get like a single eyelash in focus, that's...
Cue the 51.2.
That's right.
Yeah, literally.
No, I mean, everyone loves those lenses and for good reason. So normally we're struggling to get shallower depth of field. With macro, it's always the opposite. You have razor thin depth of field, even as you push your F number further and further up. You know, normally we'd say if you're shooting at F11 or, you know, even F16, like everything's in focus. It's sharp from here
when it's 6 meters away.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But as soon as you bring it in closer, you're in that, you know, 1 times magnification or you know, even higher magnification. Or 2.8 with the teleconverter. As you get closer, those higher F numbers aren't doing it anymore. You can be at F11.
Diminishing returns.
Massively. And that's just because the way that maths of focus works. But it does mean that you can't really use your aperture to give you more depth of field. You need to think about other ways to capture the stuff that you need in focus.
Yeah.
And the other issue that you run into is what we call diffraction. So this isn't a huge issue for most kinds of photography. You know, maybe if you're shooting landscape and you've jammed your F number all the way up to F16 or F20.
And you're a pixel peeper.
You might have seen some diffraction. But with macro photography, often, you know, our subject's kind of small in the frame because we're trying to magnify something small. And so we will be cropping a little bit. We're going to be starting to see the effects of pixel sharpness. And then also, because we're always pushing into those higher F numbers to get the depth of field we want, we're always flirting with diffraction. And diffraction kicks in, if you're using a A7R Mark V, you know that 62 megapixels, you're going to be finding that diffraction kicks in around F9. So that means as you close down your aperture, you're going to get, you know, go from 2.8 to 4 to 5.6, you get sharper, more focus. And then as soon as you go past F8, you hit F9, you hit F10, 11, you're actually going to find that it gets softer.
Yeah.
It gets blurrier. You get more depth of field, more stuff will be as sharp as it gets, but how sharp it gets is going to start coming down. You've got this ceiling on how sharp any of your image is going to be.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can push past diffraction a little bit and still get great results, but F16, F20, that stuff's off limits once you get into really deep macro because it's going to make your whole image kind of fuzzy.
And that's obviously why there was a big push to put focus bracketing into the Alpha 7R Mark V.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because then you can use those shallower apertures. When I say shallower, it's still not like 2.8. You could use 2.8, but you could shoot shallower and then stack the image and you get the benefits of nice, beautiful, blurry background.
Yes.
But you get the whole subject in focus.
Yeah. So maybe it's worth talking about focus stacking really quickly. Yeah. So focus stacking is a technique you use in macro because, as we all just said, even having lots of depth of field is still not much depth of field. So what you're going to do instead
even F16, or if you were doing like fungi photography, F16 at the minimum focus, you're only getting the front lip of the mushroom in focus.
A millimeter, if that, of really sharp focus. And so what you do instead is you take a series of photos and you push your focus back just the tiniest amount for each shot, or you can physically move your camera as well. That's what we do if we've got like a macro focusing rail where shifting the camera and therefore the plane of focus just a little bit with each shot. And so you might take 10, 20, 30, 100 photos.
You can a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a big subject that you really want to get all in focus, you have to take a lot of shots. And so one of the things that you can do now on any of our current series of cameras is focus bracketing. So you can tell the camera to take a series and you tell it how many shots you want. You tell it, if you want it to go at maximum speed or what have you. There's lots of options in there. And this is out of the box on all of our most recent cameras. If you've got an older camera, like say A7 Mark IV, you might need to firmware update it. And of course, there are some of our significantly older cameras won't have this feature, but A7 Mark IV gets it from firmware version 4. So we're currently up to 5 point something. So get that firmware updated if you're going to use one of these. But using that focus bracketing, you can then get subjects sharp from here to there.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
You do need to use software afterwards, though. This is not going to happen in camera.
No.
So there's software out there. Helicon Focus is really popular, but there are lots of programs that can do it. And that's huge. And I have to say, from a quality of life point of view, using the in-camera focus bracketing, amazing.
Versus having to do it manually with a rail or potentially doing it by touching the lens. And if the object is really small, then you're worrying about, actually changing your composition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's a very real challenge. I think it's hard to appreciate how challenging that stuff can be until you've gone out and tried to shoot this stuff.
And you said you can adjust the speed as well. So if you have an object that could be influenced by wind or something, being able to rack that focus quickly, that's super useful, as opposed to, having to take a shot and then if it's like a dandelion or something and it's moving, then it becomes very difficult, I can imagine.
Well, so I took this out to test it myself over the weekend, and I went out and found a little garden orb weaver spider in my garden.
Yep.
This spider was maybe a quarter the size of your little fingernail.
Wow.
So very small, very small. And shooting with this lens, I got a focus bracket of 30 images, and being able to rip that off in the space of second, 2 seconds maybe. I'm out in my garden, there's wind, there's gusty wind kind of coming through every so often, and anytime that wind's there, you're not getting anything done. You're not getting a good capture. And I'm shooting at 1/200th of a second, and I'm already, my ISO is up at 1600 because my aperture's down at f8, something like that, just to get a little bit of depth of field to work with. And so being able to hit that shutter and have it go the whole way through. Oh, amazing. I couldn't have got that shot without having the focus bracketing built in. So really, really handy.
Yeah.
Okay, little explainer for people who are not really familiar with macro lenses. There's these terms, minimum focus distance, and then there's working distance.
Yeah.
And they sound like they're the same thing, but they're not the same. And it's a pain. Minimum focus distance is how far you can have your subject from the sensor. And minimum focus distance is important to know because if you know your focal length and you know your minimum focus distance, you can figure out your magnification, which is important stuff to know.
Well, this one's great because it's printed on the lens.
That does help a lot.
So for someone like me.
But if you want to check our work, you can. The thing that probably you care about, though, is working distance. Working distance is from the front of the lens to the subject, how close can you get?
Yeah, from the front element.
Yeah. And often you actually want it to be longer if you can have it longer because as you get really close in on your subject, suddenly you're casting a shadow on your subject. So all things being equal, if I can take the same shot at 10 centimeters away as opposed to 2 centimeters away, 10 centimeters.
And that's also why the 1.4 and it being a 100mm makes that job easier. Because 90 and a 1.0 magnification, you'd have to be closer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we don't see a lot of ultra wide macro lenses. Obviously, there's stuff like the Laowa probe lens, which is a cool macro, but that one, even the design of that one is to be like really small so that you can get in close.
That thing's also about a foot long.
Yeah, it's kind of
it's one subway in length.
It's a really crazy one. But yeah, with a conventional lens like this one, you want to be working further away.
Yeah.
So this one's got a 9 centimeter minimum working distance.
Yeah.
Which means, you get like a bit of separation from your subject, and that actually stays the same as you add the teleconverters. So the working distance stays at 9 centimeters for the minimum focus, but obviously the magnification at that level.
Yeah. It also leaves space for light if you were adding light to the scene because you can get it in around the side of the lens, or I know some macro lenses have a ring light. You can use them.
Yeah. So we don't have any macro light accessories anymore. We used to actually make a ring light and a macro flash.
Yeah.
But obviously stacks of third-party options, which can be really excellent for this stuff. So that's magnification ratio and that's working distance and minimum focus distance. I did say at the start we'd talk about what magnification ratio kind of
because I think that's
really
definitely important. That's the crux of macro.
Yeah. And so I think it can be hard to wrap your head, especially when you maybe earlier on in your journey with photography, about what a magnification ratio, like when you say like 1 times, it's like, well, I can see like this photo of an insect. It's obviously been blown up massively. How is that 1 times? Like that doesn't make any sense. And the reason why we use that ratio 1 times or 1.4 times in this case is because we're talking about when the lens is projecting an image onto the sensor. What's the difference between the actual subject in the real
life
world
object,
and the picture that's being projected onto the sensor? So
a 1-to-1 means that if you're taking a photo of an ant, the ant is in the same size in real life as it is projected on the sensor.
We're projecting an ant-sized ant onto the image. Clear as mud. No, it is.
That's so good.
But then, you can imagine if we've got a lens which has a lower ratio, then, our ant is going to be smaller. And if we've got a 1.4 times ratio, then our ant is going to be 1.4 times bigger
than it is in real life.
That's right.
Yeah. And then up to 2.8 times.
With the teleconverters. That's spot on.
I'm sure everyone's seen those photos of the people that carve little ornate scenes into grains of rice.
Oh, yeah.
That's the kind of thing where you want the image that's projected on the sensor bigger than it is in real life, because otherwise it's impossible to see.
And you can imagine, like, even at 1.0 times, like a print is a lot bigger than your sensor, or a screen is bigger than your sensor. So we are already blowing stuff up with a 1.0 times.
But we're using resolution to do that rather than the actual optics.
That's right. That's exactly right. So with a high magnification lens, if you would, instead of having a sensor there, if you were just projecting the image onto a ground glass so that you could look at it directly, it would be bigger than the subject in the real world. That's always a really critical spec for macro lenses. I think for a long time, I mean, honestly, all through kind of like the 90s, most macro lenses, 90s, 2000s, really up until mirrorless cameras have started hitting the market, most macro lenses were just 1 times macro. Like we haven't seen a lot of adventuring beyond that, except for like very specialty lenses. And recently we've had a few like greater than macro lenses in the manual focus space, but having something that gives you autofocus, gives you access to focus bracketing, all that stuff with a greater than 1.0 times magnification. That's
awesome. And a lens that you can, again, use for other things that isn't just a dedicated macro.
That's right. Yeah, you'd be very happy with this as a portrait lens, I think for 95% of people.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just trying to think what else is important to talk about on this one. I think some of the tech that went into it is worth talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Optically speaking, this one's got dual 2 XA extremospheric lens elements in it. So that's typically the kind of thing we use to control chromatic aberration, all that sort of stuff. Chromatic aberration control is really important in a macro.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you can imagine if you've got that longitudinal chromatic aberration where you get purples or greens in the foreground, the background, that's going to be a big issue when you've got as much defocus as you do with a lens like this.
Yeah. A lot of defects. Well, I wouldn't call them defects, but characteristics of lenses get amplified at the minimum end.
Yeah, 100%. It's also often why macro lenses are such beautiful lenses to shoot with, because you have to correct the heck out of them.
Yeah. Which is exciting because it's not super big.
It's not crazy.
No.
Yeah. Macro lenses are always like on the big side, because they have to have such a close working distance.
What is the weight?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But it
feels like, I'm going to take a guess, like 690 grams?
Yeah, it could be. I was going to say maybe
even lower.
Yeah, it probably. No, you're actually probably right. It's probably it's in that half a kilo range.
Leave a comment below how much it weighs, and we can see how good we are.
It's gonna be
way off. I know it.
Yeah. Okay, so it's got 2 ED glass elements as well. That's extra low dispersion. Just helps to, again, control chromatic aberration and also control distortion. It's got the nano AR coating, so anti-reflective coating. Again, that's going to help get rid of any veiling flare and stuff like that. That is stuff where I think
it's got a lot of GM features by the sound of it.
I mean, it's a GM lens, yeah, of course.
Oh, it is. I didn't even notice. I thought it was still a G. No, that's a.
It's a big step up
because I was like, wow, it's a G, and it's got all this. It's got the 2 XDs and the XA, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a GM to me.
No, we stepped it up.
There we go. Yeah. Beautiful.
So I mean, obviously, being the step up to G Master, it had to have all that top.
Yeah, it's got the bells and whistles.
What else have we got? I think it's worth talking a little bit about the way this thing works between autofocus and manual focus as well. Yeah. So if you're in the full manual focus, of course, it's got the linear response, all that sort of stuff that you'd expect.
With again, just reiterating the locking at either end. It's got a hard stop.
Yep. So you can't send it past minimum focus distance. It'll physically stop you there. If you switch it into the AF/MF mode, so where it's got the DMF, it'll, as soon as you start moving the ring, it will cut into manual focus. It's actually got a longer throw. So for anyone who's not familiar, the throw means how far you have to turn it to get a certain amount of movement in the focus. So a lens with a short throw is going to, you can run the whole length of its focus range in just a little bit of turn. A long throw means that you have to turn it quite a long way to get the whole way through the range.
Which is really nice to have for something where you're trying to find critical focus.
That's right.
And that's also a big separation with, some lenses that were older fly-by-wire, where it was an acceleration-based method, where if you turn it very quickly, it goes very far, and if you turn it less... That's right. And that was obviously a lot harder and would be much harder with macro.
Yeah, it'll be a nightmare for a macro lens. So this one has that linear response. So as you're turning it, it'll always give you the same amount of focus change for a given amount of rotation.
Yeah.
So yeah, really important that even on even if your lens if your body is set to just regular AF, if the lens is set to DMF, it will kick in and give you manual focus if you start turning this ring while you're autofocusing.
It's also another addition to the 67mm front filter family.
That's a big family.
It's the big family in the Sony range now.
So very convenient.
It's my favorite family.
very effective on the hip pocket.
It is.
One other thing to know about using this lens is if you have it in continuous autofocus, and you're using that DMF mode, you do need to fully press the shutter, pretty quickly after you finish adjusting your DMF. Otherwise, you're still in AFC. It'll
revert back to AFC.
That's right. But one thing you can do is, say you've got an insect that you're trying to focus on just the eyes for or something, you might go autofocus to get, maybe it locks onto the body or just not exactly what you want. You can use DMF to then shift it to what you'd prefer to really have perfectly sharp. And then you can continue tracking and it should hold what you've highlighted.
Yeah, I've tried shooting spiders before as well, like in the web. And if it's in the wind, I'd put the camera in burst mode and I just rack focus manually.
Right.
Because even if you're shooting it, I'm lucky I'm on a 9 Mark III, 120 photos a second.
Yes.
And I was just slowly racking the focus on the 70 to 200 G2, the 1:2 macro.
Yes.
And that was my workaround because I could just wait until I got the right one.
Sooner or later, one of them will be sharp.
One of the frames will be good. But that would work for something like that, like where you're using autofocus to lock on and then using the DMF to just fine tune.
Yeah. I mean, after using it on the weekend, I have to say, I feel like maybe this is when maybe I'm just excited about it because I've just used it recently. But I feel like I would use that focus bracketing in so many situations for macro. It just, it's so handy. It's really great.
Even handheld, did you find it?
Look, I didn't use it handheld, but I feel like you could, and you'd still get some really good results.
If you have the speed set to high.
Yeah, you'd need it to be getting through it pretty quickly.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Very, very cool. I think that's kind of like most of the stuff that I really wanted to highlight on this one. Definitely using the teleconverters is great. So that's another thing that I did test. When you're using the teleconverters, like I said, it keeps your working distance the same, but there's two ways you can think about the teleconverter. Either you can have a longer working distance with the same magnification, or you can get that really ramped up magnification, but with the same working distance. Either way,
depends on the size of your subject, really.
Yeah, that's right. But maybe we'll try and edit in the spider picture that I took over the weekend, so you can see an example. I'm no macro expert, but cool photo.
And when you're using the teleconverters, obviously that's affecting the aperture as well. You know, you're 1.5, 1.4 times or 2 times.
So it becomes a f5.6 on the 2 times macro.
Yeah, exactly.
So
if you're going to be shooting at those larger apertures anyway.
I don't think maximum aperture is a huge consideration for most macro shooters.
Yeah.
I think most people are trying to shoot at those moderate apertures where you're kind of you're treading the line between diffraction on one side and shallow depth of field on the other.
The fungi photographers that I know a couple, not personally, but I've seen a lot of their work.
Yep.
When you're shooting in dense, wet, muddy, rainy Pacific Northwest kind of, or New Zealand, you're already struggling for light. So they're either bringing light or you're shooting shallower apertures and then just focus bracketing because that's the only workaround.
Yeah. We used to work a lot with Steve Axford. He's a past ambassador for us, and he's an incredible photographer who works up in northern New South Wales. And I think he'll be.
Is he the guy that does the time lapses?
Yeah, he's done some time lapses. He also he's done a lot of work for. He's been featured on Planet Earth, actually. Some of those.
Yeah. No, I think I've heard about his work where he has a studio just specifically to do the like the plant or fungi time lapses for. BBC and stuff.
Well, last time I spoke to him, it was a shipping container full of dead wood that just had these incredible fungi growing on it. But that's pretty cool. He's a pro. I'm sure we'll be arranging one of these for him at some point. Anyway, very exciting lens.
Very exciting lens. I'm excited there's another macro to the range now.
Yes.
The 90 is still staying in market?
90 is still in market, the 50 is still in market, and for the APS-C shooters, the 30 is still in market. Yeah. So 30, 35? I want to say 30.
Or you could put this on a APS-C body with the 2 times tele.
By all means.
Get another 1.5 times crop.
Get some serious magnification going on.
That is some serious magnification. Yeah, or even if you're using an Alpha 7R Mark V or an Alpha 1, then you still can use APS-C mode. You can crop in later. But
no doubt. Yeah. You can get. I think my favorite thing about shooting macro, just to add a personal note, is you can find amazing subjects literally anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're outdoors and there's a plant anywhere near you, you've already got an awesome subject.
Yeah, and with all the rainy days we've had in Sydney recently, water droplets, everything.
Everything. There's no shortage of things to shoot. So it's a great rainy day lens.
All right, that's the new lens. 100mm Macro GM.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
See you then.
Bye.